Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, we are back after somewhat of a hiatus. This show has been definitely a challenge, but I'm glad that I'm able to bring it to you today because I realized that technically today is 5 years that I've been doing this thing. Now, it's not been consistent of late, but 5 years ago, I did an episode and I called it Black Friday, F-R-E-I Day, if you get what I'm saying. And it was with Viva and Barnes, and I just wanted to share what this actually looked like, because some of you might not remember Viva Fry from 5 years ago, but here he is. So this is the 5 year ago episode, and the opening with my cat and with David.
Wild.
Hold on. We are live with extra life going on here. This is Gizmo. He does not want to be left out.
And
so
Gizmo, he's attracted.
So anyway, 5 years ago today was the first instance of what became Legal Friday. So I just wanted to put that out there, and it is kind of wild that we've been at it for all of this time, really. But for today, we have Runkle of the Bailey.
How did Viva become such a big star? What happened to you?
Thanks. He already was a star. In fairness, he already was the star. So I think he had 100,000 subscribers back then at that time.
That was different then.
Yeah, now he's got 600 plus 700. I've lost count. Many more. And another heavy hitter, Runkle the Bailey. Ian Runkle, how you doing?
Oh, doing all right. I wouldn't say I'm a heavy hitter, but it's good to be here.
Oh, you're a giant channel compared to this. Ron, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. All right.
And our special Georgia correspondent coming from MK True Crime is Phil Holloway. And I'm sure Phil will be filling us in on one of the cases that just got dropped, essentially. I don't know if it was only Trump or all the defendants or what. All of them. Yeah. Okay, so I'm talking, of course, about the Georgia case with the Fani Willis follies, whatever we want to call it, and tell us about what's going on.
Well, I love to call it the Fani Willis Fulton County fiasco. That's really about the best way to describe it. But it's dead. It's over. Completely over. Done. There was
this part of it's over, Phil. I don't think it's done.
I know where you're going, Ron. I'm gonna get there. But the case against all the ones that didn't take plea deals, and I think there was about 3 of them that did. Trump and all the remaining co-defendants in Fani Willis's Fulton County massive RICO case. Of course, she got booted off the case. The Georgia Court of Appeals said she was disqualified due to the shenanigans that went on with the appointment of her lover and special prosecutor, and potentially her having some of that money paid to him that flowed back to her by way of romantic vacations and whatnot. And I'm simplifying. This is the Reader's Digest version, right? But she asked the Georgia Supreme Court to put her back on the case, and they said, no, we're not going to hear your appeal. So that was it. As I predicted on this show and my show and in many other shows for the last few years, I predicted that once she's off the case, the state of Georgia, through their, we have something called the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. It's a very small, but a state agency that's designed to support prosecutors. One of the roles that they have is to come in and either appoint conflict prosecutors or serve as the conflict prosecutor in the event that any prosecutor's office in any jurisdiction in the state for any reason is disqualified. Let's say you're a state court solicitor general and you're prosecuting DUIs, and let's say the husband of one of your secretaries in the office gets a DUI. Well, you're going to need to farm that out and let somebody else handle it due to a conflict of interest. And so the PAC serves this function. Well, they couldn't find any other prosecutor that was willing and able and qualified and didn't also have a conflict of interest to take on the case. And so, as I predicted, they would probably enter their own appearance as counsel simply for the purpose of reviewing it and then getting around to dismissing it. And that's exactly what happened as of Wednesday of this week. What's today? Friday the 28th. So that would have been Wednesday the 26th of November 2025. Now, as Ron was quick to point out, that's not necessarily the end of all of the issues pertaining to the case. It seems we're going to get to talk about this for a little while longer moving forward because President Trump's lawyer, and I know some of the other lawyers as well involved in this, and I believe that they are going to attempt to take advantage of a relatively new Georgia state law that allows defendants, and this law was written like specifically for this particular case. And I don't know if Eric, if you were, I posted a tweet about it in the last day or so, because it sets out the statute, right? The statute says, look, if your case is if you have a prosecutor that is disqualified from your case due to some type of wrongdoing, and then another prosecutor subsequently dismisses your case, you're entitled to reasonable attorney's fees paid for by the jurisdiction at issue. And so there's literally the law was written with this situation in mind, and it has come to pass. And so I think that the next round of litigation is going to be all these defendants filing petitions in the criminal case to get money paid. And think about it, folks, that's in the millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? You have all these defendants, very complicated litigation. A lot of these lawyers don't come cheap at all. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we're going to have the next litigation. And here's, I can predict it now. The defense, Willis, is going to say, well, wait a minute. I was removed because of an appearance of impropriety, not because of actual impropriety. So that's what she's going to say, and that's going to be the next battleground in this fiasco.
Yeah, which will cost even more money. And, well, it's not the first time Fani Willis has cost the Fulton County taxpayers millions of dollars in unnecessary proceedings. I mean, the entirety of the YSL. I haven't heard the final money tally on it, but I would not be surprised if the entirety is in the $10 to $15 million.
I feel a little bit cynical about some of this, though, because last time I checked, has it really hurt Fani Willis? She seemed to be reelected in a landslide.
She doesn't care.
Well, it's Fulton County, Eric, and it's 70-80% blue, right? So and there was a Republican nominee, but in the general election, in a jurisdiction like Fulton County, where the most populous parts, like the city of Atlanta, it's almost like 100% Democrat, and there's some other parts of the county. It's very large.
She smoked him in the primary too.
She didn't have any competition in the primary. I don't think she did, but yeah, I mean, she's got a political machine, and it's formidable within the county. And at the end of the day, there's just not going to be any real way to knock off an incumbent. We had incumbent DAs in Fulton County that everybody hated going back, quite a while, and it was really hard to get rid of them for that reason. But it's, it is what it is. She's going to be the DA in Fulton County until she's either voted out or maybe forced out through some other mechanism that I haven't yet seen come to pass.
Yeah, that's why I feel, so jaded about, things like that. It's like, okay, what does she care? Like the Young Thug trial, right? That could be seen as a debacle, but she's like, I don't care. She got convictions. Nate set me straight on that one. He's like, as a prosecutor, she doesn't give a damn if he doesn't serve 1 day in prison. She got the W. That's all that she's going to care about, and she'll go out touting off, which I believe she did. I won, Young Thug.
Yeah.
Well, and Young Thug wasn't dismissed due to prosecutorial misconduct or anything like that. So that there would be no that statute that's going to, I think, apply to the Trump case and the co-defendants cases. That statute wouldn't apply to YSL, but it clearly is going to apply to this one. But she's going to say, and look, she may be partly right on this. The trial court never ruled that she had actual misconduct. I don't think there was anything in that ruling that made that specific finding. I think it was all based on the appearance of impropriety, not an actual impropriety. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
All right. Well, obviously we'll probably be seeing and hearing about her again in the future. I picked another story to cover. I'm interested in where everybody is going to land. Let's just say that my stance on it has been kind of controversial in my own community, but it's one of those where I have zero sympathy for the people involved, but I have big problems with our doing it. And that's the Venezuelan boat strikes. And some Democrats they're asking a question I kind of am asking too. What is the legal justification of just shooting boats and people out in international waters? And I really wish we had Legal Vices with us to talk about it, because I believe he was maritime law. And it would just be interesting to...
I have a thought. I mean, if we're talking about, let's just say you had a foreign actor that was out in international water launching a missile that was going to land and hit, the beach in San Diego, right? Populated area. There would be no question that the president, as commander in chief of the armed forces, has constitutional inherent, almost not completely unchecked, but pretty much unchecked, authority to meet that threat using lethal force. So instead of a missile inbound to San Diego, you have poison that foreign actors are injecting into the country that is, lethal to our citizenry. So we're in international water. These people aren't in our country. There's no constitutional protections for them. They don't get due process. They're not in our jail. They're not in our court system. They don't have due process. So the only thing is...
So let's say that it was...
So you agree with,
American
say, if
citizen.
Canada decided to bomb an American truck?
We might be
if that truck were proceeding... A truck is a bad example because the sea, international waters...
That's right.
...is a thing.
Yes.
A. B, not B, because Phil just went through a whole bunch of letters of the alphabet. And another letter of the alphabet is when the United States Navy tells you, stop, we want to investigate your cargo. We want to make sure that you're proceeding in international waters lawfully, since you seem to be headed toward our coastline. And instead, they accelerate their speed and do not obey instructions. That also is unlike the Canadian. Canadians would never do something like that. On the contrary, they would apologize, for giving you any concerns. They would. So it is a pretty defensible. It's pretty defensible.
I don't know. It's. I think there's a stretch there. Can you definitively say that those are coming there? It is international waters. It's not like, they're running in the coast. They're not within our border, technically. So if they're shooting international waters, how do you know?
It's the inherent right of national self-defense is part of the UN Charter. We're signatories to it. It's part of international law. As a nation, we have the right and, in fact, the obligation to defend our borders and our shores.
I agree with all that, but they're not within our borders. They're in international waters. What I'm saying is, if we do this, hold on,
the border before the threat reaches the border.
But
so if there's an American on a boat
of like Venezuela bombing a U.S. fishing boat, if they said that it had, weapons on it or something like that, hey, we've got a drug problem. these people are bringing guns in from the U.S. We're going to bomb this fishing boat.
Oh, well.
Would they be, would they be equally supportive?
If the boat disregarded lawful orders to...
How is it a lawful order in international waters? I'm going to keep circling back to that, because how can you tell anybody to do anything in international waters? That's like nobody's territory. So as soon as they cross into our waters,
well,
you're right. I agree.
Eric, by that argument, there's no problem. You could just, if you think there's no law in international waters, then there's no law against attacking a boat in international waters, right? I mean, obviously there are rules that govern international waters.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is, let me ask you, if you were on patrol outside of Pearl Harbor and you saw the Japanese fleet heading towards Pearl Harbor on December 6th,
sure.
but you have to wait until they were within 10 miles or whatever of Pearl Harbor, which now is then U.S. territory, to start.
I'll tell you what, if anybody did it to American citizens, it would be an act of war, and you all know it. So let's not be hypocritical.
No,
here. If they do break into,
it's the exact same question.
Okay, well, I don't care if it's 10 miles. You think our missile can't hit them within 10 miles? How fast is that boat going to go? So 10 miles, whatever it is. I don't even know what the international water distance is. What is that? 100 miles? 12 miles?
We have.
Here we go. 12 nautical mile territorial sea limit.
But the U.S., I think, actually claims 100 miles or something like that. I remember this from the early 80s or something.
And by the way, everybody's like, oh, I don't care. Up around, find out.
Right.
Whatever. Tactical empathy. I don't care about them. I don't give a damn about them. Great.
We know that we can get away with it. That's not the question. The question is, from a legal point of view, can we work it out?
The constitutional authority for the president to act is there. It comes straight from the Constitution, right? Nobody has a right to traffic drugs into the United States. And if they're in international waters and they happen to not allow themselves to be inspected, that just gives us, I think, more ground.
What right do we have to inspect anybody in international waters?
Can we
pull up to a naval vessel?
I think we are talking about two different things here, because you have, I believe Phil when he says that there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that prohibits it, but you have what is called the UNCLOS, UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which U.S. has signed. Then that applies. Now, what does that say about attacks on international water? And I'm trying to go through it, and as per usual with the UN declarations, it's thick, but I mean, does the United States have, for instance, an armed conflict with Venezuela?
We have a reward out for the head of Venezuela.
It's because he's under indictment.
We haven't declared war against.
He's under indictment. He's under federal criminal indictment.
Yeah.
That's different. I mean, you can.
But that's not the whole country.
There's
that's
a bunch
individual.
of head of states that, in itself, are chargeable allegedly in The Hague. That doesn't mean it's an act against the country. So, is it an act between the U.S. and Venezuela? A declaration by President Trump that Venezuela is, I'm not there. Are you in an armed conflict with the Venezuelans, with Venezuela? In that case, there are rules of engagement in international waters. But if you're not, but that doesn't apply to what's going on in the United States. That is in the international things with international waters. So I think we are talking about two different things here.
Well, there's an inherent right, legal right in international law to defend one's nation. And it doesn't matter if they're sending poison or they're sending missiles. It's a threat to the citizenry. They're in international water. The president has the power to do it. There's nothing illegal about it. Now, you can have a debate about whether it's good policy. That's always fair. but you can't say it's illegal because it's not. It's clearly legal and clearly something that the president has the power to do. Nobody.
But again, if North Korea did it, or Venezuela did it, or anyone did it to an American boat,
this is a might equals right.
Opposite would be
okay. No, I wouldn't either. Look, they have a right to protect their countries from international threats as well. I mean, all countries do.
Right, and if they did it, the United States would not respond by objecting to the illegality of it. I mean, maybe we'd object, but you'd have to. I mean, the United States doesn't. I think the only way you can really sincerely ask this question is by asking whether or not it's sufficiently clear that the boats have drugs on them. If the boats have drugs on them, then it's and there is more than ample evidence that those drugs are being sold by a cartel that has become essentially synonymous with the Venezuelan government, which sells drugs because it can no longer raise money merely just by selling oil the way it did 10 years ago. So you don't have to have a declared war for there to be hostilities between two countries. That if that were the case, then it would always be to the advantage of a country that does not declare war to take advantage of the lack of a declaration of war and attack another country. So the Office of Legal Counsel opinion is that the cartel's activities pose an imminent threat, and it's a self-defense principle from Article 51 of the UN Charter. And the congressional authorization, there's no specific congressional authorization because it's a constitutional power that the executive has to use the armed forces to protect against threats from the United States. That's the argument. You can buy it or not buy it, but I mean that's the argument. I think the only real question, Eric, seriously, is are we satisfied? Because the only information we have about what's really on those boats
is what they say.
It comes from the same agencies that are doing the attacking.
Exactly. That's true. And what happens when what if there's confusion and oops, it's just some rich ass person on their yacht floating out there or whatever.
It's a really good idea to stop when the U.S. Navy tells you to stop.
Huh?
Well, Eric, that's just the risk that if it's this administration or any other administration. I mean, hell, Obama was targeting U.S. citizens with drones on foreign soil.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either.
I mean, so
it's like, well, yeah, okay, so, yeah, that's bad. Targeting citizens with drones, bad. I don't think
U.S.
that's good
citizens
policy.
U.S. citizens traveling abroad, or they actually have constitutional rights, right? So we're not talking about people who have any constitutional rights under U.S. law, under the United States.
I hope so. I don't know. I didn't mean them. I mean, there's specks, that are blown out of the water. As even Ron said, we don't have definitive proof. It just it feels uncomfortable to me. Maybe it's legal.
This is why the president. No, this is that's the political calculus. The president, no matter who he or she might be, always has to figure. Well, okay, let's say we screw this up, we get it wrong. There might be a political. Problem that I have to deal with. So that's sort of the check against the going too far with these things. But it's not like in the United States, if I'm a cop and I want to pull Eric over for some kind of thing, I've got to have what's called reasonable articulable suspicion that crime is afoot. That's literally what the law says, right? So I've got to have reasonable articulable suspicion. That's not probable cause. It's certainly not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But there is no such standard out with drug boats in international water. There's no requirement that you have even the boats, reasonable articulable suspicion. It's something. If it is anything, it's much, much less than the constitutional protections afforded to the motoring public in the United States.
I never said that they had constitutional right one time, ever.
Well, I'm
not trying to apply the Constitution to them. To me, there is a spectrum. Blowing out of water to arrest, there's, it's different levels of reaction. And by the way, just because I question, do we have the authority or the right to do this activity, does not mean I have a single bit of love for drug dealers. Do you think I care that they die? No. I think it's probably in, many.
The question isn't
thing,
whether the U.S. has the right. The question is, does China have the right? Because the rule, if this is the rule of law internationally, then the same rule that applies to the U.S. applies to China.
Yes.
Does China get to, if like a U.S. yacht sails a little bit outside into international waters, can they go and say, hey, we're going to blow that up? Gabe Newell of Steam drives a little bit too far off the coast, and it's like, all right, we're going to drop a bomb on that. Is that okay? Or is it just like, we've got the bigger guns, so it's all okay? Like, we should be arguing this from the perspective of what powers does China have?
I literally started this by saying under international law, all nations have the inherent right of self-defense. All nations, not just U.S.
All right. Well, this is
and so long as people are consistent on that, okay. But I suspect that if it happens, we're going to see some real uproar.
Well, and if I think that if this were let's just say this were a Chinese boat, I think that I think there would be some different calculus that would go into that equation, right? You got the whoever's making this call, whether it's this president or any future president, is taking into account hopefully all those considerations. Is this boat coming? Is it flagged by a nation that's a nuclear superpower? I mean, if so, we might want to handle this a little.
Then we care. You see, that's my point. It's like it is a might making right angle.
Eric, you have it exactly opposite. This is exactly what asymmetric warfare banks on, is reactions like yours. We're the big, powerful country. Why can't we tolerate?
I'm not asking you to tolerate.
No. Let me parody your point of view, and then you will tell me why I'm wrong. But my parody of your point of view is, because we're a world power, if not the world power, we can tolerate large numbers of incursions and offenses on our sovereignty. We don't have to worry about those coming from China or Russia, because those are big countries like ours, and anything they would do that would threaten our sovereignty would be an act of war. But if it's not someone who's waving the Russian flag or the Red Navy flag, then we can tolerate it. You
don't think China's sending fentanyl over?
Hold on. That is not what I'm saying at all. When you say parity,
tell me why it's wrong.
Okay. Why it's wrong is I'm not saying we should tolerate anything from anybody. I'm saying that there are international waters, and then there's our waters, and there is a buffer. The second they cross, then I think they have every right to blow them out of the water, do anything we want, right? They hit.
So that is your argument. So I think
that's not tolerance.
But I think that then that argument has to defer to something that I don't know if anybody in this discussion has, which is a knowledge of the tactical realities of whether you can actually interdict these boats in time before they get into what is recognized as U.S. waters. If that's your problem, then that's a legitimate question. I'm not sure that it answers itself, but it's a legitimate question. But I just don't know. Personally, I get seasick.
Can I just ask a point of clarification?
Hey, Nate.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Aren't these boats being blown up off the coast of Venezuela? So they're not, like, there's no question. It's like not even close to our territorial waters, right? Aren't these boats being blown up?
International waters.
Yeah,
way out there.
There's no like question. So in that case, we're really just talking about like essentially piracy, right? Like the British do with the pirates. I don't know.
They are being compared to pirates. Yes. They are being compared to pirates and smugglers.
So if that's the case, then are you guys kind of saying like there's like no holds barred? It's like, well, if you deem them a pirate, and you can do that.
If U.S. military forces tell you that you're suspected of being a smuggler of drugs, you're in international waters. You have a choice. You can show them, you can stop and say, no, look, take a look. I'm good. Or you can say, let's get out of here. We have something to hide. So in the street, in American law, we do not say that police are allowed to shoot someone because they're running away from the cops.
Mm-hmm.
But in international, law, it appears that we do say that, especially because they're not merely running away, they're trying to get past your defenses in order to smuggle cargo that is incredibly dangerous for the people in your country. It's essentially the same as an armed attack.
Well, the policy has also changed that they're not trying to interdict them. They're just like that. That's in the article that was linked, is that they've said that their policy isn't to try to stop them anymore. It's just to blow them up. So it's not that they're resisting an interdiction. It's that they're not being interdicted at all. They're just being attacked. That's a different scenario, though.
Basically, when they leave the Nicaraguan port.
Yeah, but this is why I have problems.
Where's the link?
And everybody's like, you're assuming the international water is a neutral safe zone. Is not. Their home country's water is a protected zone, as is ours. International water is the buffer. They risk entering. Well, again, that's a free for all. Okay, just kill anybody you want in the international water. You deem that they're a threat to your country. Any country in the world can do that, from anywhere to anybody. International waters. Usually some of this logic, it's a free for all. And I just have some problems with that.
All right, but what's the answer to my Pearl Harbor example?
Your Pearl Harbor example is what? Well, as soon as they cross in, you shoot them down. Again,
Eric,
we've dealt with this.
You're saying I have to wait until they're 10 miles away from Oahu before
There's a difference between crime and war, though.
You can have that position, Eric. You can have that position. It's a preposterous position.
It's not a preposterous
There's a difference
position.
between crime and war, though.
No.
That's also a war.
Runkle,
that's true.
Ian, before we get there, I want to make it clear that in both, if indeed there is a difference here, the idea that you have to that when a hostile nation is preparing an attack for you, you have to wait until they actually put their little pinky over the 12-mile limit before you stop them.
Yes. When you're being attacked, yeah.
Essentially, I'm not going to use adjectives. I don't. If that's your argument, you can live with it. I'd rather live by being a little bit more proactive about protecting.
I mean,
my
I represent a ton of people who are driving to Alaska and bring they have an AR in their vehicle because they whatever. Should Canada crush their vehicles into a cube with the occupants in it? Is that how we should respond to that, or should we respond to it as sort of minor crime?
Wait, these people are doing what again?
People Americans who want to drive from the continental U.S. up to Alaska quite frequently have guns that are not permitted in Canada. It's a very common transgression. And so they're smuggling something in. Can Canada just blow up that vehicle, or should we actually respond to that as in some other manner?
You're stipulating.
You're apples and oranges. You're talking about a vehicle that once it gets into Canada, Canadian law applies, and I don't think Canadian law allows for what you're saying. I mean, there are rights of individuals, even foreign nationals, on the soil of Canada, just like there are in the United States. So your law doesn't permit that. So
and if we change the law to permit that, would that be okay? Would the U.S. be fine with that?
But if we
international water, there is no such law. There is no such law.
If we change that stipulation a bit, you also have Americans who go by boat via American.
That's true.
But U.S.
you will
via
be within
Canadian
their waters.
harbors up to Alaska, with guns in the boats.
Okay.
On that boat.
What about them?
Yeah.
What about them?
Would Canada be allowed to? Hey, you are having illegal weapons. on the way to Canadian harbor.
I would hope they'd
Same
seize it.
situation.
But
If they're in Canadian waters, you got Canadian law that applies. You got to follow Canadian law. If they take guns through Canadian waters unlawfully, they do so at their own risk.
I'm glad you agree with me, though. When you're within the waters, then yeah, the jurisdiction there is there. That's all I've been saying. It's like,
but there's jurisdiction in it. There's laws that apply in territorial waters, Eric. Out in international waters, little applies. It's like
do what you want.
Yeah. The only law the president needs is the constitutional authority, and it's there. And it's also there as a matter of international law through the UN Charter. I mean, it's the inherent right of self-defense.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to make the distinguishing piece to it is that in international waters, obviously you guys are saying a lot more goes, but what I think the issue here is that the jurisdictional piece in international waters seems to be confusing most of us in terms of, but I don't think it's illegal for the president and them to do what they're doing. I do think I do agree with Eric and Runkle about the ethics of it, but I think the legal argument that this is illegal or something like that, I think that's a harder argument to make. And as Ron keeps saying, preliminarily, if you can show a potential threat, then international waters kind of gives you more of that leeway to act preemptively than wait to that occurs. If don't forget, I just had brain surgery, so if I'm not making any sense, please forgive me.
You're fine, Nate. You're doing fine. It's some good chats here. I mean, obviously, the majority of the people are pretty much against me, and I knew that was going to happen. But I'm fine with that because I do have issues again with that. And Ron, I understand what you're saying. You have very few examples though where we can't intervene if we have our eyes on them. Like the whole argument of, well, the Navy tells you to stop. Hey, well, the Navy's telling you to stop. As soon as they cross over, they can blow them out of the water. Our weapons are far more effective than you give credit for. A speedboat drug, I don't know of a single drug speedboat out there that could travel fast enough to outrun a missile from a naval vessel or whatever else. That 12 miles is a pretty damn long stretch. I don't know how often you've been out on the water and how fast you've seen the boats. Okay, I'm just
my understanding is that my understanding is that you are mistaken on this point. These boats are incredibly fast. By the way, these guys have submarines. They have submarines. They're in this.
I mean, the concern isn't that they're going to take this boat to U.S. waters. The concern is they're going to take this boat to Mexico and then drive the stuff across in trucks. Typically, they're not, or they're going to put it into a submarine or something else. But these boats are not typically headed directly to the U.S. as they are,
right? No,
because once they're on a satellite, like once they're being monitored like that, just they're not going to make it. And if they did make it, they'd be making it to 50 guys with rifles going, "Hi, you can unload."
So let me ask you,
now.
Eric, when John F. Kennedy established a blockade around Cuba because of the missiles that had been set up there by the Soviet Union, that was equally offensive, right? Because the only thing the U.S. Navy was saying was that we're the U.S. Navy, Russian ships, and you can't come in because we're the U.S. Navy.
Sure.
But they did go to the UN and get that approved.
They did that. We also planted missiles in Turkey pointed at the Soviet Union.
No.
You want to play?
Objection.
This is relevant.
Irrelevant.
No, it's a provocation. Hold on. It's a provocation. There's missiles
provocation.
There. And the missiles are pointed directly at us and they can reach us. Did we blow them out of the... No, did we blow those missiles up or did we put a blockade there saying, hey, look at this. You got missiles. They're pointed at us. Stand down.
The analogy is to the ships. The analogy is to the ships, not to the missiles. We didn't blow up the ships because we told the ships turn around and they turned around. Provocation. The provocation is these boats are delivering to Mexico as Ian just...
Which is even worse, dude. It's even worse. So it's like, it's not even... It's the speculation that, why don't we just go to the source then? Okay, where's the fentanyl manufactured? China. Why don't we just bomb it there? I mean, you're literally saying blow these people out of water. They're not even coming into our waters. They're going to go land in Mexico, and then we determine, oh well, then it's going to be hauled over. That gets a little even further out there. Why don't we do more?
Maybe I can make it say it this
that
way.
Heroin's going to go into Mexico.
It sounds like what you're saying, Ron, is that you're supporting summary executions of these drug boats that are not going to U.S. waters on the presumption that they are delivering illegal narcotics to a third country, and those narcotics may lead up to the United States in some preventative measure. And I think that seems a little tenuous.
Right. You're entitled to think that. Just as the United States said to the Soviet ships, Soviet ships were not attacking the United States. They were on their way to Cuba. Cuba was not at war with the United States. The United States said, you want to do something that is hostile to the interest of to the safety and security of the United States. You're going to turn around. And because of the force that was employed, the Soviet ships turned around. That's what's happening here. Now, except that these boats are not turning around. They are running. Now, let me ask you, Nate, the cop.
Before you ask me that was a fantastic rebuttal to what I said. So you shut me up. So whatever you say now is just going to get more and more embarrass me. So yes.
As a cop, you knew, and as a defense lawyer, you knew that you've got a that when fleeing is not evidence of guilt.
Correct. Fleeing is not evidence of guilt.
But as a cop, you know, and as a former criminal, I heard this from some guy on the internet, that most, of course, most black people run from cops because everyone knows cops just want to kill black people every opportunity they get. But very frequently when people flee rather than agreeing to be searched, they might be libertarians. They might be jealous of their personal constitutional rights, or they might have something to hide. Why is it now in international law? If you believe that now, of course, we've changed the scenario from what was happening at the beginning to the one that Ian just described, which is where we're shooting these boats. In fact, it is accelerated. It's not like the case of the blockade around Cuba, because again, they didn't fire on the Russian boats. They told them to turn around. And from what you guys are telling me, they're now firing on these drug boats. And by the way, is there particularly, is anyone aware of evidence suggesting that these are not drug boats?
I wouldn't know. I mean, all I have is the reports that they put out.
Testimonials, but I've never seen.
Yeah, I don't think that's in dispute.
All right, so
well, just to be clear, the Venezuelan government does dispute it, but
yes, that is disputed.
So.
Oh no.
Well, here's
I'm not saying
my
they're
thought,
right, but they do
though.
dispute
We're
it.
talking about historical analogs. We've talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that stuff. You can go back to before World War II, but those were government-flagged vessels operating under the government's authority, the Soviet Union's authority or the Germans' authority or whatever. These are private individuals. And we have developed international laws relating to individuals operating outside of governmental organizations committing terrorism. And I think the fact that these individuals have been identified by a government authority, the U.S. government, as being a threat to U.S. security, that authorizes the attacks in international waters under international law, based on the way we've approached terrorist organizations. That's my thought. And I think you need to clarify some things on international law before you really try to ham down on this.
Again, if you swap in China or North Korea, does your argument still stand?
No,
and
then
American
it would fall
boats.
under the traditional. Then it would fall under more of the tradition. If it's a Chinese flag, Chinese like authorized by the Chinese government, basically a Chinese.
No, I mean if China decides to blow up an American fishing boat because they say you're bringing drugs to us, would you be equally in favor?
Would they?
Nobody's saying nobody's talking about being in favor.
But I would say under international law, it would be justified.
We're talking about what's legal and what's not legal. Nobody, I've not heard anybody say what they are in favor of. And I said it. Yeah. I said it before. If China is protecting its national interests and its borders and its border security by dealing with threats that are on their way to the Chinese shores before they get into their waters and they deal with it, it's justified, just like we're justifying it. I'm not, of course, it's not a double standard. It's the same. All nations have the right of self-defense. I can't say it more clearly than that.
When you see like athletes getting arrested and charged in Russia for possession of marijuana.
Can we stop everybody? Hold on. All that's a bad example because again, they're within the Russian borders. And again, my argument over and over and over has been within our range. I have less than zero problems with that. So if anybody's within the borders or international, the territorial waters, I have zero problems with it. So the comparisons of, an athlete in Russia, yeah, tough. If you're in Singapore and you're smuggling drugs, tough shit. These are problems. You've gone in there, you've gone into the country, you have this. My problem is, and to use the example, Phil, when Ian brought up China, now let's go back and just say, now this is supposed American drug dealers, and they just left the American coast. They're now in international waters. They're closer to here than they are to China, and they blow them out of the water. Still cool? Because that's a better analogy.
China's going to look, whoever is the one employing the force I would have to justify that they are in fact, doing so. Otherwise, they risk some kind of retaliation, militarily or otherwise, from the country of whatever flag is flying on that vessel. So it's all done with a certain amount of caveat emptor, right? If you do it, you better make sure you got a damn good reason for it, and you better be able to justify it, or perhaps be prepared to face the consequence from whatever country the other country is you're dealing with,
or be so strong that there's nothing they can do about it.
Going back to pre-World War I and pre-World War II, the Germans were attacking U.S. civilian ships and other civilian ships, but U.S. we're talking about in particular right here. And they were saying, even though that there were civilians on board, that they were in fact supplying Europe with munitions and other things. And they in fact were. And the Germans were justified in doing that. It's the exact same thing. Now you take the risk of starting a war, absolutely. But again, under international law, is it lawful? I say yes. And, even what's going on right now, especially with the way, and that's what I said, if we didn't have the international laws on terrorists and things like that weren't connected to a particular nation or country, weren't flying under their flag or doing anything like that, then I would say it's a lot murkier. But international law has recognized that individuals and groups of individuals not connected with countries can still pose a risk. Under that whole thing, I would say that it's completely legal.
I do just want to make the distinction in this argument, because we are making two separate arguments, and I feel kind of crazy because I agree with both sides. In other words, the legal argument is essentially, yes, they can do it. And I agree with Ron and Phil 1,000,000%. That is the legal argument, they can do it. But then on the Runkle is making, and Erica making, I think, astutely, is that just because you can do something, is this the right thing to do? And if they were to do it to us, will we also consider it? And I think that is something that is worth considering.
Well, I can't wait to come back here and talk about this once we learn that Navy SEALs and Special Forces are boots on the ground taking out cartels probably as we speak.
Yeah, and if Mexico invited us in, that's cool. If they didn't, then
they did.
I've got problems with that.
They didn't.
Oh, Mexico certainly invited us in.
They did invite us in.
No,
it's been back and forth on it, but I do believe they have.
Okay, well, if we forget about Mexico, wait till we find out that we're in Guatemala or someplace else, using kinetic force, with our special forces. Because I can't prove it, but I believe it's already underway.
Oh, it's happening in Venezuela.
It's called the CIA, Iran Contra. I mean, duh.
It's well underway in Venezuela. They're using special ops against the cartel. I have actually shared a couple of YouTube videos on this topic from a really good account who's been following this stuff. It's happening right now. It is an undeclared war. And it's, there's no question, I think, that we are doing stuff that we would not be able to do if it weren't for, it's Max Afterburner has been following this, a very big military account. Stuff that we wouldn't be able to do if we weren't a major power. But then again, we wouldn't be a major power if it weren't for our economy, and they wouldn't be selling drugs in the United States if it weren't for the economy. And it wouldn't be doing the harm that it was doing. I mean, all these things are related.
Well, we used the U.S. military, of course, to go into Panama to take out a head of state who was under indictment in the United States. We did that in the 80s.
A lot of people thought that was illegal.
Who's to say, so the military is executing an arrest warrant. So who's to say that's not going to happen again?
Well, that's an arrest, though, Phil. I mean, it's not like
I know I'm changing this. I know I'm purposely.
Okay, but I've got one more. I've got a Rumble rant that I just want to get in there. Somebody wrote, last I checked, the Monroe Doctrine is still in effect since China is using fentanyl/precursors as part of influencing Western Hemisphere through Venezuela. It's all fair game. That's interesting. I don't know if I would tie it in with the Monroe Doctrine, but
I don't remember what that was.
Essentially, we determined that the Western Hemisphere cannot be influenced by Europe's incursions.
Yeah. I think it still is in effect, actually. I just pulled it up because I couldn't remember if it was.
Yeah, I think it's still in effect, but in a weird sense, everything's already been claimed. I don't think there's anything unclaimed out there.
No, it's just government, like Europe can't interfere in the governmental affairs of South America or anything in the Western Hemisphere. That's U.S.'s domain. That's what it is. And I don't know if other countries still acknowledge it or not, but
I don't know either. Yeah, it's like all the interference must be ours. Only us. We are the ones that interfere. And by the way, all of you are saying
at his best.
And by the way, folks, just because I have issues with how this is being done does not mean I have Trump derangement syndrome. Does not mean I'm voting for AOC or any of the other, retarded comments like that.
Welcome to my side, brother. Welcome to the dark side, Eric.
Good Lord. I knew that I would be hearing some stuff, but what the hell?
I came out of brain surgery, and Eric got TDS.
You have terminal TDS.
Oh, my God. It's like, okay, whatever. Oh, jeez. Yeah, okay, yeah. I love AOC's politics. That's right. That's right.
Who's AOC? I don't know.
Oh,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, just a useless congresswoman.
Don't.
Okay, you know what? Here's a contest for you. Who's worse, AOC or Jasmine Crockett?
Jasmine Crockett.
Worse? Really?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I think AOC might be worse because she's marginally smarter.
Oh, that. Oh, now I know
one.
who AOC is. I just Googled. Okay, I know who that one is. Cute as a button, absolutely.
I say AOC because she has more influence.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, Jasmine Crockett lost her seat. So.
Oh, there you go.
What?
The seat's going away.
Well,
I know Nate's brokenhearted.
She's dumb as a sack of rocks.
No, they stated, but that's up for grabs now because they said the stupid legislature here, they drew the maps, D's and R's, but the way they drew the maps, it happened to take into account racial gerrymandering. So now the lower courts have stopped the new maps from going into effect because these idiots, instead of drawing it based on political affiliation, what happens to be all the black people are Democrats anyway, they drew it based on racial dynamics, and that now gives them an argument to make it illegal. So the old map, she may keep her seat. The old map may stay, which is like, I don't know how you make that mistake if you're in Texas. It's like, but they made that mistake. It looks like Alito's the one that actually removed is allowing the new map, the order to stay until the Supreme Court can see it, but that's where it's at right now. That map might not go into effect.
All right, I got to leave it there with you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm gonna have to punch out, but Nate, buddy, it's good to well, I was gonna say good to see you, good to hear from you, and wish you all the best.
I'm sitting here with tubes and stuff in my brain. No, listen, I want to say this. This is so therapeutic. Just being able to argue with you guys about this craziness, it's crazy. I don't know if you see me tripping over stuff in the background, but no, it's so therapeutic. And I know the chat, they always call me the crazy lefty, crazy this, crazy that. And I appreciate that because, every day just getting up this morning and breathing air and having my friends and just speaking to you guys, it's so great. So, I thank you so much, Phil. And thank you so much for reaching out to me too. I mean, like you guys, people think that we just come on these things and just say shit to each other, but don't really know that we really care about each other. And I just appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys.
All right. Let me know if I can help you, brother. And everybody else, have a great weekend.
See you, Phil. Thanks a lot.
See you, Phil.
I'm going to one up on my idiot circle here. I'm going to say the dumbest person in Congress, Senate and House of Representatives, is Mazie Hirono.
Yeah.
And anyone argue that?
I don't know who that is.
There are a lot of
it's U.S. politics.
Very closely tied for second, but
she's number one with a bullet.
Who is that guy who keeps falling over and falling asleep, who's been barely functioning the last few years?
Mitch McConnell?
You're going to have to narrow that down.
Yeah.
Maybe Mitch McConnell. I mean, Biden's falling upstairs. I don't know. You've got options.
Well, falling upstairs, there's more than one person in Congress and presidency who's done that. And
true. Well, one of the ironies, the first president that was noted for falling was Gerald Ford. And they even made a big deal out of it. Chevy Chase made his bones impersonating him and doing pratfalls going into Saturday Night Live. But the big irony is that Gerald Ford is actually a extremely decorated, I don't know what he would call it, but he was an athlete. I don't know if he was a Heisman Trophy winner, but he was like a major football player in college and incredibly athletically gifted, etc. So it's just one of those odd ones.
Didn't Gerald Ford do this MasterCard commercial as well?
The who what?
MasterCard commercial? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
He was an accidental president for sure, though, like Truman.
Oh, he's the only unelected president in history.
Depends on who you're asking nowadays. And
that's fair enough.
Hey, did you guys talk about the whole the Comey Letitia James stuff yet or no?
Not yet. That's a good calm subject we can roll into. I think that most people feel that the Comey charges were weak, and that was expected. But the Letitia James charges seem to have a little more meat to them. And did she just make a brilliant move by having her attorneys tuck into the Comey?
What is it that makes you think that the Comey charges being weak had anything to do with the dismissal of the Comey charges? You realize that the dismissal was premised on the appointments clause.
Okay.
It was not on the merits, it's without prejudice. And I don't think they're weak. I think the government's response to the motion to dismiss demonstrated quite the contrary. But the real point is that's not the point here. Now let's continue with what you were saying about the Letitia James stuff, which is definitely juicy.
But okay, and that was also the appointments clause. And I was just saying that James was clever, or her team was clever to join in with the Comey argument. Were they not? Or is that wrong on that too?
I don't know.
Yeah, they did. I disagree with Ron about the Comey indictment. The Comey indictment is fucking bullshit. And I know I just went through brain surgery, but I've read a lot of indictments. That was bullshit.
No, I know you did a video on that, but you've done lots of videos that have been wrong on that kind of thing. It's okay.
Of course. I'm probably going to be wrong on this one.
Yeah, no, I don't know. But the point is, it wasn't a ruling on the merits. It wasn't a ruling.
Oh yeah. No, you're definitely right. I think you're being a little too aggressive with that, but it definitely wasn't on the merits. And I think also too, you still have the SOL issue because they had 5 days to file it. Now you got it without prejudice. They'll probably put a new prosecutor, but the clock is running on that one. That's probably going to be done. The Letitia James one, like you're saying, I think would be a travesty if they were to on this, because I think they got her dead to rights, but it's politics.
Why would they dismiss her? Why would they dismiss her indictment? What's the deficiency with it?
So the deficiency was the appointment. So they had appointed the prosecutor in the Eastern District, and they went through Congress. Then he is fired or quit or whatever. And then the second step, if you want, the Congress passed a law saying, okay, you can appoint a replacement, but there was like this process. They kind of skipped that process, and it allowed Halligan to do it. But so the court comes back and says, hey, the prosecutor who indicted it didn't have the authority. Now, generally in cases like that, if the prosecutor doesn't have the authority to indict, it's a technical error, but that doesn't kill your case. They'll say, "Our government, you go back and let the." So even all the news media saying, "Oh, it's dismissed," it's bullshit, because what they'll do is they'll say, "Okay, we're going to appoint this person the right way." You go back, refile the paperwork, and it's like it never happened. So that's essentially what's going on. In a nutshell.
I don't practice federal criminal law at all, and the thing, so I'm not familiar with the grand jury process. I understand that there needs to be 12, but there has to be some situation in the past where 12 indicted on 2 counts, but not all 3, and so they just struck a count and moved it forward. There has to be something like that in the past, is there not? Does anybody know?
It's not about the grand jury's actions. To even take it to a grand jury, you have to have the authority of the state prosecutor to take it. They're saying
so
the prosecutor didn't have authority to take the accusatory instrument into the grand jury. So that's their big issue.
Okay, so that's different than what's been reported. I haven't really followed it. I've been watching it cursorily, like news reports and things like that. That's not what's been reported, so of course not, right? But
if you just read through it, it's the fact that she did, and the crazy part about it is, let's say the Attorney General of the United States, she can go in and re-indict it right now, and you have no issue. But it's the fact that the person who actually went into the grand jury didn't have the authority to argue it in front of the grand jury, and that's why Ron was just saying it's a technical issue that's really meaningless. He's 100% right with that.
The problem is, though, Nate, the reason why it was her, if I recall, is they were having trouble finding an attorney to actually file against Comey. And some people even got fired. So there was a reluctance within the office of the people who are already there to even file on the guy. You got the statute of limitations problem. So with her being taken out and they're having problems finding a prosecutor, he's probably fine. Or am I wrong in my interpretation?
Finding a lawyer to sign on the bottom of the indictment is not going to be a problem.
I was going to say, that seems like a prosecutor that doesn't want to prosecute something. I've never heard of one.
They can always go to Fulton County.
I mean, it happens.
Fani Willis is available. I mean,
but just to be clear, that's the problem here. No other prosecutor in this office will sign on an indictment, and there are 2 reasons for that. One, because of the ethical code. I don't know if when I was a prosecutor, they used to dread this in, is that you can only bring indictments that you have probable cause for. If you don't, then you can get hit on the ethics part. So all those prosecutors
they're really concerned about that in the U.S. attorney's offices.
Well, that's what all of them are citing. Obviously, Ron, it's bullshit, but that's what all of them are citing. So that allows them not to sign on, and the only person they can get the fucking signing document was Halligan, and Halligan obviously qualified. So now they're back.
Yeah, that's not their problem. That's not the problem. The problem, however, is legit. Whatever other issues there might be they remain problems. But doing the paperwork is not going to be their problem.
But I would say this, Ron, if you were the defense attorney for either one of these, you literally have the prosecutors in the office saying that there's no that they don't have enough, that it's not sufficient to get probable cause. It's like this is like the defense attorney's dream. Like, yeah, even the prosecutors in the office are saying this is not good enough. So I don't know how far you take this prosecution, because if the prosecutors in the state's office they don't have enough to bring it.
You keep saying state because you're thinking like in your old days.
I'm thinking of a new state. Right. Yeah, but in this the feds.
So Nate, everyone is pretty well aware of how politicized the U.S. attorneys' offices have become. Mm-hmm. The fact there are U.S. attorneys in Delaware who literally sat on and buried prosecutable offenses by the Bidens for decades. The January 6th, there is no credibility whatsoever left with these people. So the fact that you have a politically active prosecutors who don't want to be part of this prosecution, notwithstanding all the smoking guns. Again, looking at the response to the government's motion to dismiss. I guess you're right, Nate. You could make some hay as the defense attorney. You do your best with it, but ultimately that's not evidence. That doesn't get in front of the jury.
Yeah, of course. I just think it just makes it a tougher case because whoever gets that is going to be able to be somebody who's going to be running through it. But again, like I said, Comey, I think is nonsense. I think Letitia James should go to jail, but that's my opinion, and I got.
Well, from what I understand, there's plenty of time, and they can appoint somebody to bring the charges against Letitia. I thought that these charges were dismissed without prejudice, or the cases were dismissed without prejudice, so they could be brought again. So Letitia James is not completely out of the woods. From both of them,
both of them can come back. But the biggest issue with Comey is that Comey has a 5-day indictment. I like to call it a 5-day indictment, because remember when they indicted him, they only had 5 days left before the statute of limitations ran out on 5 years. So what this judge did to save the case is essentially stayed the statute of limitations 5 days, told the government, find another lawyer to sign this. But I'm assuming in maybe 30 days or 60 days, if nothing happens, Comey's going to be filing a motion to end this case with prejudice, because the statute of limitations is going to run out. How you can't just hold it forever. So the government is on the clock with Comey. Letitia James has plenty of time. I think it's 10 years. Comey is the one that's in the real jeopardy. That's why he's out there doing all these news interviews and stuff, because he knows if he can get past the 30, 60-day time frame and he starts screaming statute of limitations, the government's fucked. And now you got no to sign the indictment. What are you going to do?
And the frustrating part about it is, Comey, I feel, is guilty of a lot more, but that was because the statute of limitations. It was like that was the last thing that they could kind of grab him on, from what I understand. That, other choices and things that he did in office, it's too late.
Yeah, because you had Biden in office and they drug their feet. It was only 5 years. It was great for Comey, bad for the country, but it's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, I think Comey saw more eye to eye with the Biden administration than the current administration. Just my feeling. So
fair play.
I think that they probably thought, hey, that's okay. Look what happened with Kleinsmith. That has to be one of the biggest jokes I've ever seen.
Whatever happened with
Kleinsmith, Eric Kleinsmith,
yeah,
the guy. What could be worse than a lawyer? Literally changing a document, in my opinion, fraudulently, and he's practicing law. How is that possible? That really bothers me.
Understandably.
So I guess anything goes. All right, so what is another calm, non-contentious topic we can discuss today?
Well, but before that, I have to say goodbye, because obviously
thank you, Nate.
I'm still recovering. My wife is now yelling at me to put the phone down and stop arguing with Ron Coleman. So I'll stop arguing with you guys. But listen, guys, thanks again for dealing with me, and I really, really appreciate this. And again, I still disagree with Ron and the I don't like these these extrajudicial killings, but they are lawful. So I'm with you, Runkle. I'm with you, Eric, and now I will see you guys a little later.
Take care, Nick.
Thank you so much. Ron, you got to duck out too?
I got to go, and I know Nick also was
yeah, I've been trying to find a pause so I can do an off-IF motion, and it seems like off-IF. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, everybody. Thank you very, very much.
And then there was just the three.
Yes, now let's start talking about these sons of bitches. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, I mean, we're not going to go too much longer anyway. What cases are coming up? I've been so out of touch, doing JFK stuff, Oklahoma City stuff, and conferences, and going to England, all kinds of. I'm out of it. I have no idea what's going on. What's the David case? That's interesting. Have either of you looked into that? The you super young, really popular artist whose possible girlfriend was found in the trunk of his Tesla.
I'm starting to look into that because I've had some people asking about it. It's probably going to be one of those things that's like, do I want to cover this? But I'll have to see.
Interesting. See. I was in LA when her body was found. And so the news started locally a little bit, tripping around, and then it sort of expanded from there. That's an interesting case. I don't know what else to say about it except really weird facts there.
Well, it's so weird that he just seems to be just out touring, doing whatever the hell he wants.
Right now he's just the lead suspect. He hasn't been charged with anything, or
I guess it's so weird.
I mean, it is kind of strange.
And I guess the question is, was he in possession of that vehicle at the time? But she also went missing for a while when she was supposedly with him. So I'm not up to speed on anything new that's come out, but it's just a very weird circumstance. Yeah, and like you said, he's just sort of out and about doing his thing, still doing his shows and everything. So,
and I agree with you, on that. Ian, that technically hasn't been charged. It seems like, I don't know. I guess they're just.
I'm not saying it doesn't look suspicious as hell, because it absolutely does. It's just like, what else are they going to do? I guess they're trying to make sure they've got the case lined up before they. Because I mean, if they pull the trigger on charging him, and then they don't have everything lined up, then he's like, well, I want speedy trial. We're doing this as soon as we can, and they don't have the time to get it squared away. So
that makes sense.
I mean,
and it's not like the vehicle was with him. It was towed because it was allegedly abandoned somewhere. Just all of it is weird. That whole case is weird.
It's definitely freaky. And I guess I could sort of see that where she's been dead for a long time. He's probably not an imminent threat, even as a suspect, to anybody else.
So the backstory is that he's not a rapper. I thought he was a rapper at first, but he's like R&B? No, he's like a DJ or something, right?
Oh.
Okay. I do have a little bit of judgment for people who are still going to his shows, though.
Yeah, right.
It's like, that's a choice.
Yeah, so he's a DJ, and he's getting somewhat popular in the local LA area, and he's hanging around some fairly young people, but he's also not that old himself. The girl that went missing, if I'm not mistaken, she was like 14 or 15 or so.
Yeah, I think she was 14 when missing. She'd be 15, and for some reason, it's like they keep reporting it like she's older, even though she went missing and potentially perished when she was 14, and that I find kind of odd too. I sort of feel like they're not really pressuring this guy like they would just about anybody else. The press is very gentle. I don't know why.
She seemed to be sort of unusual fan of his, if I'm not mistaken, and she also has like
matching tattoos and
and so the question is did they actually know each other? How much did they know each other? Did they hang out? There's some text messages involved. I don't know if there's a clear-cut line like, he knew her and he was last with her when she went missing. There's it's not clear on all of that. It's all very weird.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see if anything happens, if there's a trial, and maybe you guys will be covering that. I don't know. What other cases are going on?
Brian Walshe should be starting soon. I don't know if you guys know that case.
What is that?
Yeah,
he's being charged out of I believe it's Canton, Massachusetts, same place that Karen Reed was, or at least in the same area, because there's a lot of the same players, prosecutors, detectives. There's the Proctor, the one detective that is now, dismissed and shamed. He was, I think, the lead detective in this case. So there's a lot of people that were covering the Karen Reed case are looking at this trial. His trial is supposed to be starting next week, but interesting. So he was charged with obstructing police in the investigation disappearance of, I believe, his wife, hiding a corpse or like disposing of a corpse, and then unaliving his wife. He pled guilty to the obstruction and the hiding or cutting up of a corpse, but not to the murder. And so he's going to trial on that. And the reason why I'm interested in that case is because I feel like it's a very good strategy for the defense, and that they won't be able to bring in a lot of the testimony that shows like the consciousness.
Absolutely they will. Absolutely they'll be able to. It's relevant to the murder. It's 100% relevant. They're going to bring all that in.
They're going to try to, but I think the purpose of the plea, in my mind, because they didn't really say why they were pleading guilty to the two extra things, is to eliminate the evidence that would be presented at trial.
But that evidence is coming in anyway. Like they're not going to be able to say, oh, well, you can't talk about how he disposed of the body or Googled how to dispose of a body. Like, because that is directly relevant to consciousness of guilt for a murder. It's coming in. Like, he's not dodging it with that. That's what would be relevant.
What would be the strategy? Like, I wasn't watching all the pretrial motions and stuff, and I'm sure there were pretrial motions on excluding evidence and things like that. I have to imagine there was some strategy to pleading to the 2 counts and not the ultimate, unaliving count. And that's the only thing that I can think of, is that it would dramatically limit the evidence that would be coming in.
But all of that evidence is directly relevant to the murder. Like, if he wasn't charged with those offenses,
I agree with you, especially the consciousness of guilt aspect of it.
So, I mean, I think they just don't want the jury being asked those secondary questions of did he dispose of the body or whatever. They're making an argument. I mean, the suggestion they want to say to the jury is, look, he's taking responsibility for the things he did, but he didn't do this other thing, right? So it's not a great thing, but he's up shit creek. He's like, he does not have a whole lot of likelihood of prevailing on this one.
We had a case similar in Michigan last year that I covered, where a cousin was charged with the unaliving and then the disposing of a corpse. And he went to trial on both of them, but his argument was she was in my place, she died, we had a bunch of drugs around, I freaked out and just threw her in a dumpster.
Yeah, and that could be his argument. And like, this plea deal frees up a little bit more room for him to testify, because, he can get up there and say, look, I disposed of the body. I did all of these bad things. I'm taking responsibility for that. Like, I'm not an innocent or whatever, but I didn't do the murdering. And like, it is a strategy, there is some strategy to it, but it's not like this brilliant move that keeps all of this evidence out, because it's not going to keep it out. They're absolutely going to talk about what he Googled and when he Googled it. And they're absolutely going to use his admissions against him to be like, you got rid of the body, because, me, if I came home and my wife was dead, the first call I'm making is not to Hoss Long to dispose of body. It's, I'm making the call to, to the paramedics, to the police, to, whoever, everybody. Right. So that's going to be the argument there, but it's probably just that the evidence of him disposing of the body was sufficiently good.
When you brought up the fact that this will make it easier for him to testify, that makes a lot of sense, because he's going to have to, right? And And if those two things are hanging still, then it makes it harder for him to testify. So I do see that. Yeah, that'll be an interesting trial. Are you covering it, Uncle?
I don't know if I'm going to cover it because I sort of put it in the category of like legally boring. In the sense that
it was for me too, until he took the plea on the 2 counts. And I was like, all right, I'm interested now. I kind of want to watch this.
And to me, I still go, that's still just legally boring because he's just, I just see it as he's on rails towards getting convicted unless some major screw up happens or there's some major upset. I mean, I got people who are criticizing me for like, why didn't you cover like Nick's stuff? And it's like, well, because it was legally boring, right? I wasn't even going to cover Johnny Depp until it actually, like, Johnny Depp wasn't interesting to me until it was like, holy crap, he's actually got a chance. Because watching Johnny, like,
well, come on,
when
their
I heard,
testimony was very fascinating to watch too.
Well, when I heard that he was suing, like, a celebrity is suing for defamation, I'm like, the legal test is basically you lose. Unless, you could pull off this miracle. And it wasn't until I started watching some of the testimony and I was like, oh, wow, he's got a shot at the miracle on this one. So now it's interesting. But I don't see that
first
for Walsh.
witness.
Like,
His first witness, I think, was Isaac. That's where I was instantly hooked.
Yeah, no, there's some great people involved with it. I think that made a big difference. And as far as interesting goes, so what about Rittenhouse, Ian? That one I thought was a fascinating trial.
I thought Rittenhouse was interesting because they're proceeding with this case against him. And I was looking at that going, this looks like when I first heard the news about Rittenhouse, I was like, oh, that kid's screwed. Like that kid is. And then eventually the video came out and I watched the video and I went,
oh,
wait a minute. This is actually one of the clearest self-defense cases I think I've seen in ever. So, I mean, I was wondering, like, how's the prosecution going to get over this video is the prosecution's argument just going to be, you hate this kid, so therefore convict him?
Apparently.
And Joe saying what Runkle means is he saw the numbers everyone else was getting. The thing is there's going to be numbers on Walsh, and I don't think I'm going to cover it because it doesn't. If I try to cover stuff that doesn't interest me, it shows, right? People can tell that I'm like, I don't care about this. That's why I stopped covering like Lively Baldoni because I was just like, I hate all of these people. They suck. And I can't stand hearing about them anymore. Like Baldoni was probably wronged. But I still cannot stand Baldoni, and I can't stand Lively, and I can't stand any of them. Because, like, the way all of these Hollywood people communicate with each other is so freaking toxic. So I was just like, I can't cover this because I hate everybody. Like, I hate all of them.
Well, Gwyneth Paltrow, how was that? Same principle?
Paltrow was interesting partially because Paltrow is weird. The guy accusing her was even weirder, and the lawyers were also weird. That one was fun to cover just because.
What about the Cardi B trial? That was the Cardi B trial was it had characters, right? And so I watched it, and it was short too. I didn't stream it though. I didn't like comment on it, but I watched it because it's just the character that is Cardi B is just fascinating to me. Just the idea that this person exists. Yeah, no, I get that though. And that's why I don't stream all the trials. There's a few that I pick that I find legally interesting. Like the last one I streamed was a officer in Grand Rapids that was charged with shooting a suspect, and he got acquitted while it was a hung jury, and then they dismissed. But so those sort of things, like you say, that are legally interesting.
My dream is to be able to cover a Canadian trial like gavel to gavel, but they don't stream them. So, that's
any chance of it happening soon.
I want to go in and make an application at some point and, and try to convince them to stream one. And so, but I'll probably start with something small. I'll probably start with something like, theft of a liquor bottle or something like that. And just say, look, this is how, because Canadians are stuck watching U.S. courts. And so some things you can learn from it, but a lot of the things are, are different. And so you're sitting there going, I run into Canadians who are like, oh yeah, I watch all this legal content, but they don't know anything about how like a Canadian court works. And I'd love to be able to change that, but you can't change that so long as our courts are so defensive and so secretive. And that's really what it comes down to is there was like this little baby step that got taken. One court for a major murder televised their giving of the verdict. And it absolutely screwed the chances of further coverage because the guy made a legal error in delivering his verdict.
Oh, God.
So he used a section of the criminal code for first-degree murder by, essentially like a felony murder rule kind of equivalent. But that was found to be unconstitutional. And so he gave his verdict, and we all walked out going, did that just happen? But because that was like the big baby step into delivering like live coverage and it burned the judge, I don't think you're going to see other judges being super keen to do it. And it sucks. I may start doing coverage of like Supreme Court hearings though, because those are televised. And so we'll have to see.
Are they live or are they after the hearing, like released?
Some of them are live. I've been to the Supreme Court all of once, and mine was delayed. And the reason why it was delayed is because it was a sex assault trial.
Oh,
and so it was delayed just in case somebody names the complainant, because, complainants on those in Canada, you're not allowed to publish their name. Nobody ended up naming the complainant, so it just got released. If they'd named the complainant like once or twice, they would just edit it out. But if it ends up being that like every third sentence people are then they're just like, live recording is not available. When
I go to the Court of Appeals on whatever, and there's a minor involved, the court always says, this is being live streamed to YouTube. Do not use minor names. Use the child, use initials or whatever. And they constantly warn you.
Yeah. And the thing is sometimes people still screw it up. And so I get it that they want to, but I mean, even those trials, they could put them out later after they've had a chance to review it and censor it out.
Right. That would be fair.
Or just, televised stuff like, the major, we've had major murder trials and so forth where there's no minors involved or anything like that. Some of those maybe we could see televised and just like gavel to gavel, like coverage of that from the beginning to the end.
Like the Paul Bernard thing back in the 90s would have been great to watch. And
yeah, although that one, a lot of the exhibits they would have, and that one, because that one's less likely that they would approve it just because of the nature of the allegations. Like it was very serious. But, we've had, there was a trial for a guy who, or there was a guy, I forget if he went to trial or if he pled out, but he murdered it was a security guard, like Brinks or whatever. I forget which company it was. And he got the idea to murder all of the other people on his cash pickup team.
Okay, there you go.
And take the cash, and he ran south and didn't make it very far. But, like covering his proceedings would have been interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's no minors involved. There's no anything. It would have just been like, okay, let's have some straightforward coverage of this. Omar Cotter, he had proceedings about, his situation, like televise that. It was of national interest.
I would like to see all trials. Oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
I was just asking if Parliament was televised in Canada.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's very raucous in comparison to ours. I mean, like,
oh yeah.
England too. I love that. In New Zealand, it's like we're so it's weird because it's like we're dignified, but we're kind of sleazy on the side, whereas you guys are more raucous, but you're more dignified out of the room, if that makes sense.
And it's raucous, but there's also rules for it. Like you can't call the other side a liar, but you can kind of mockingly describe their claims and that kind of thing. So,
so a lot of sarcasm is thrown around. Is that
it's very entertaining. Yes,
very much on the sarcasm. But I mean, like, you know, what they call question period is almost entirely used for insulting the other side.
That's awesome.
That's
so
fun.
You'll get things like, you know, can the honorable minister on this side, because you still call them the honorable minister, even though you're about to make fun of them. You know, can they just, you know, explain where this money went? And they're like, and they never actually answer the questions. So it's like, how much money was spent on this program that failed? And they're like, we stand behind our, you know, goals for Canadians. And they're like, how much money though did you spend on this thing that failed? And they're like, and they'll do anything other than answer the question. So,
it reminds me of, I don't know if you remember in the 40s, the ultimate insults. Good day to you. and it is sort of that vibe, which I just think it's fun, you know, when I've seen that and watching. But on that note, we had a bit of a debate here, which was fun, and that's what we do on this show. On Fridays, we don't always get along or don't always have the same opinion, but we're always friends in the end. And that's the cool part of this program, and something that I'm really proud of is that I think it's great to disagree without being disagreeable. And you know, having opinions and sharing them with different viewpoints is awesome. And on that note, though, Ian, what do you have coming up?
Well, the matter I really want to be covering is actually my own matter, but I'm held off for now. It's my matter and it's also other matters, but there's a lawyer out of Illinois who's very bad at what she does, and she has not liked my coverage of her.
Oh,
and she has not liked my coverage of her to the degree that she went and got a stalking no contact order.
What?
Yes.
Out of Illinois or Canada?
How does that work when you're in Canada?
Out of Illinois. It's the most ridiculous BS ever. I am currently fighting that, and so I've got a whole bunch of like backlog, because some of this stuff I have like recorded videos of that I am just waiting to release. So that's fun.
Question, actually, you know, I have a question about that to both of you. Could a stalking type order or whatever, somebody getting that, be considered almost defamatory? I don't know if
they're not going
to off kilter, but can it ever be? Because it seems like it would be. Like if I have a protective order against fill in the blank person, gives the impression that person is a violent individual who is dangerous. That would seem to be defamatory if there was no justifiable.
So there's two things here. You can't necessarily be found liable for defamation if you put it into a court pleading, because the courts don't want to quash people's incentive to file things, and so you don't really have a cause of action for defamation if it's placed in a court pleading. But what you're really talking about is like false light.
Yeah.
It's like, even if it's true, but it's putting you in a false light. And that's something I haven't really looked into. That would be interesting.
Well, everything that is in a court pleading with some with some narrow exceptions is going to be covered by, that privilege of it's in a court pleading. But there are arguments to be made for, the abuse of the court process to impair somebody's civil rights or those kinds of things. So there are possible options. And all of that's being explored. But for right now, it's just, it's just a matter of things. There are some really fun elements to it that I can't talk about yet because I don't want to let the other side know that they're making a mistake.
That's fair. I guess what I'm asking is like, okay, Dave, for whatever reason, I just don't like you and I want to screw your life up. So I get a restraining order against you, even though you've never done anything. You've never gone near me or anything else. And then I go online every day and I go, this guy, Dave, I've got this restraining order against him because he's such a, I don't trust him. I feel afraid. I've got a restraining order. That to me is a false
So
light
you
or something.
distinguish two different things. Your court filing is one thing, and then your statements on YouTube every day thereafter are something different. And even though you're talking about the case, that doesn't mean that it's covered under the privilege. So it could be false light and defamation and all those things, even though you have a pleading going.
Oh, somebody said abusive process. Is that a thing?
There is abusive process too, which is what Runkle was getting at. Like if you're abusing the legal process just to exact some revenge or get someone to quiet down, and that's the basis for a lot of anti-slap statutes too. Is sort of this abusive process kind of idea. Like you're putting stuff out there to shut somebody up. You could, that's not the legitimate means for using this process, such as a PPO, and therefore you're abusing that process. That could be a separate, distinct cause of action.
Fair enough.
And it's not protected by the judicial immunity.
But otherwise, I'm just covering. I've been covering some Canadian stuff, in the news. I've probably got a video that'll drop later, mocking a politician who is like, "I promise to do something incredibly stupid," and so that'll be coming out. I haven't really decided like what the next big trial I'll cover is, but until then, I'm just going to cover like issues that interest me. So.
Fair enough. That sounds good. Dave, what do you have coming up? And thank you so much for jumping in and joining.
Yeah, no problem. So I had some thoughts on your debate. So I was like late, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to jump in yet because you guys are doing your thing. And then I decided, you know what? I have some thoughts. Let me throw it out there. So the next thing I have coming up is actually an interview with the Ricadas, Nik and his wife, next Saturday.
Okay, that'll be
you guys want to check that out. We'll get them on, and we'll have a nice conversation.
That's excellent.
Now
I'm glad.
I'm curious as to what all that's going to be about. That should be interesting.
Yeah, well, it's a friendly conversation. Actually, so it's if you guys don't know, I have a channel called Legal Law, Life and Libations, where we interview various people.
Well, they can't have the libations, Dave. I don't think they can have the libations right now.
I've got the Lego here. We got to make that happen.
Yeah. So Nick's coming on Legal Law, Life and Libations next Saturday, December 6th.
All right.
Nice. There you go.
Wow.
I literally have the Lego.
All we have to do is set a date then, Runkle.
Is that 3-dimensional?
I assume so.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's beyond my capabilities. So, all right. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Everybody, thanks for joining. Hopefully I can get some sort of a schedule back going with this. I'm not giving up on it. Like I said, this is 5 years today. Started Black Friday in 2020 on my original channel was just my name, and it kind of got shifted over to here. And I hope that you consider subscribing, checking it out, and tell a friend.